The Korean Mafia boss froze mid-bite, his wife watching him smile, when the doors swung open and his black ex walked in, holding 3 identical little girls who all looked exactly like him. The frozen moment. Part 1, the encounter. The crystal chandelier's light scattered across the private dining room like shattered diamonds. But Kim Tae-jin felt his entire world crack into pieces when the restaurant doors swept open and revealed a face he thought he'd never see again. 5 years. 5 years since he'd walked away from Los Angeles, from that penthouse apartment in Koreatown, from her. 5 years since he'd buried that chapter of his life beneath layers of duty, tradition, and the weight of the Kim family legacy. Now, on his 3rd wedding anniversary, dressed in his finest Tom Ford suit with his wife Min Seo seated across from him in her elegant silk hanbok-inspired gown, the past had materialized like a ghost demanding recognition. Jasmine Williams stood in the doorway of Seoul's most exclusive restaurant, and she wasn't alone. 3 little girls clutched at her dress, one at each side and one slightly behind her, peeking around her mother's legs. They couldn't have been more than 4 years old, identical in a way that made Tae-jin's breath catch in his throat. Even from across the room, he could see it. His eyes staring back at him from those small faces, his mother's nose, the Kim family's distinctive widow's peak hairline. Time stopped. The soft classical music faded into white noise. The expensive French wine in his glass might as well have been water. Min Seo was saying something about the dessert menu, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Tae-jin. Min Seo's delicate hand touched his wrist. Are you all right? You've gone pale. He forced his gaze back to his wife. This woman he'd married to unite 2 powerful families. This woman who'd given him 3 years of respectful partnership, even if not passionate love. Her doe eyes showed genuine concern. Her porcelain features creased with worry. I'm fine, he managed, the lie tasting bitter. Just felt dizzy for a moment. But he wasn't fine. Nothing was fine, because Jasmine was walking toward them now, her stride confident despite the 3 small shadows following her. She wore a simple black dress that somehow made her look more regal than half the Chaebol wives in Seoul. Her natural hair was styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders, and she carried herself with the same fierce grace that had first captivated him in that UCLA lecture hall 9 years ago. Their eyes met across the restaurant. Hers held no surprise. She'd known he would be here. This wasn't a coincidence. This was deliberate. Good evening, Jasmine said when she reached their table, her voice as smooth and warm as he remembered. She spoke in perfect Korean, her accent barely noticeable. I apologize for interrupting your dinner, but I believe we have something to discuss, Mr. Kim. Min Seo looked between them, confusion blooming into something sharper. Do you know this woman, Tae-jin? Before he could answer, one of the little girls, the one who'd been hiding behind Jasmine, stepped forward. She looked up at him with eyes that were unmistakably his own and said in clear Korean, Are you our Appa? The restaurant seemed to tilt on its axis. Part 2, the unraveling. The drive back to the Kim family compound was suffocatingly silent. Min Seo sat in the passenger seat of the Bentley, her hands folded perfectly in her lap, her face an unreadable mask. Tae-jin gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his mind racing through impossible calculations. Jasmine had said they would talk tomorrow. She'd given him her hotel information. The Shilla, of course, nothing but the best. And then swept out of the restaurant with the 3 girls in tow, leaving behind a destruction more complete than any bomb. How long? Min Seo finally spoke as they pulled through the compound gates. It was before we married, Tae-jin said, his voice hoarse. Before we even met, when I was in Los Angeles. But you knew. It wasn't a question. You knew she was pregnant when you left America. No. He slammed on the brakes in front of their private residence, turning to face her. No, Min Seo, I swear to you. I had no idea. She never told me. Why wouldn't she tell you? Min Seo's composure was cracking, emotion bleeding through. If you were together, if she was carrying your children, 3 of them, why wouldn't she tell you? Tae-jin let his head fall back against the seat, closing his eyes. Because I told her I could never marry her. Because I told her that when my father called me back to Korea, it would be over. Because I made it clear that my duty to my family would always come first. And did you love her? The question hung in the air between them like a sword. Yes, he whispered, because lying now would be the greatest insult. Yes, I loved her. Minascio's sharp intake of breath cut through him. She opened the car door, stepping out into the cool soul night. Then I suppose you have a decision to make, don't you, husband? She walked toward their house, the traditional hammock they'd renovated together, where they built their careful, respectful life, and didn't look back. Tae-Jean sat in the car, alone, and let himself remember. Part 3, Los Angeles, 5 years ago. The UCLA Law School lecture on international business law should have been boring, but Tae-Jean found himself transfixed by the woman 3 rows ahead. She sat with perfect posture, her hand flying across her notebook, occasionally pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. When the professor posed a complex question about cross-border intellectual property disputes, she was the only one who raised her hand. The issue isn't just jurisdictional, she'd said, her voice clear and confident. The real question is whether we're applying a territorial approach or a universalist approach to IP rights, and whether the existing framework can even accommodate the digital age's borderless nature. The professor had beamed. Tae-Jean had been impressed. After class, he'd caught up with her in the hallway. That was an excellent point you made. She'd turned, and he'd gotten his first clear look at her face. Warm brown eyes behind stylish frames. A bright smile, natural beauty that needed no enhancement. Thanks. I've been researching it for my thesis. She'd extended her hand. Jasmine Williams. Kim Tae-Jean. Korean? She'd asked, switching seamlessly to Korean. Your name sounds like you're from Seoul. I am, he'd replied in Korean, surprised and delighted. You speak Korean? My best friend in high school was Korean. I spent every summer in Seoul with her family. I fell in love with the language, the culture. She'd smiled, and something in his chest had tightened. I was planning to do international corporate law with a focus on U.S.-Korean business relations. They'd gone for coffee. Coffee had turned into dinner. Dinner had turned into a relationship that consumed him entirely. Jasmine was brilliant, sharper than most of the men in his family's organization, quicker to see angles and opportunities. She was passionate about justice, about using law to protect rather than exploit. She challenged him, made him laugh, made him think about the kind of man he wanted to be rather than the kind of man he was expected to become. For 2 years, they built a world together. She met his friends from the Korean community in L.A. He met her family, her warm, welcoming mother who'd raised her alone after her father died, her younger brother who was studying engineering at Caltech. They talked about the future in abstract terms, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room, that Tae-Jean was the heir to one of Korea's most powerful crime families, and that his father would eventually call him home. Come with me this weekend, she'd said one Friday evening, curled up on his couch in the penthouse his father paid for. My mom wants to meet you properly. We're having a family dinner. Jasmine, he'd hesitated. I know, she'd said softly. I know you can't promise me forever. I know your family has expectations. But we have now, don't we? Can't we just enjoy now? So he'd gone. He'd sat at her mother's dinner table, eaten soul food and Korean fusion dishes that Jasmine had learned to cook, listened to stories about Jasmine's childhood, her father's military service, her family's history. Her mother had looked at him with knowing eyes. She cares about you, Mrs. Williams had said when they were alone in the kitchen, him helping with dishes. My daughter doesn't give her heart easily. I hope you understand that. I do, he promised. I care about her too, more than I've ever cared about anyone. But her voice had been gentle but firm. But I have responsibilities, a life I can't escape. Then don't hurt her more than necessary, she'd said. When the time comes, be honest, be kind, but don't string her along. 2 months later, his father had called. Your brother is dead. You're needed at home. Now, Tae-Jean's older brother Sung-ho had been groomed to lead the family. His death in a car accident, or what was called a car accident, though everyone knew it was a hit by a rival organization, had changed everything. Tae-Jean was no longer the spare who could play at American university life. He was the heir, and Korea was waiting. I have to go back, he told Jasmine that night. My brother, There was an accident. She'd held him while he grieved, asked nothing of him, simply been there. But after the funeral, when weeks turned into months and his father's demands became more explicit, the conversation they'd been avoiding could no longer be postponed. "Come back with me," he'd said, even though he knew it was impossible. "I know it's asking too much, but—" "Would we get married?" she'd asked directly. "Would I be your wife, or your mistress kept in some apartment, while you marry a suitable Korean woman your family chooses?" His silence had been answer enough. "I thought so." She'd smiled sadly. "I knew this was coming, Tae-jin. I'm not angry. I'm not even surprised. But I can't be that woman. I can't live in the shadows of your life." "Jasmine, I love you," she'd said, tears streaming down her face. "I love you so much it hurts. But I love myself too. And I know my worth. I'm going to finish my degree, pass the bar, and build an amazing career. I'm going to find someone who can love me openly, who can build a life with me without conditions." "I'm sorry," he'd whispered, holding her one last time. "I'm so sorry." "Me too," she'd said. He'd left for Korea 3 days later. She hadn't called. He hadn't either, knowing that any contact would only make it harder. He'd thrown himself into his family's business, learning the operations his brother had managed, meeting with the other family heads, accepting his father's arrangements for an appropriate marriage to Park Min-seo, daughter of the Park family's patriarch. He'd tried to forget Jasmine Williams, and he'd almost succeeded. Part 4, the meeting. Tae-jin arrived at the Shilla Hotel at 10 the next morning, having barely slept. Min-seo had locked herself in the guest room, and he hadn't tried to coax her out. What could he say that would make any of this better? The concierge directed him to a suite on the top floor. He stood outside the door for a full minute before knocking. Jasmine opened herself, dressed casually in jeans and a soft sweater, her locks pulled back in a ponytail. Without makeup, she looked both exactly as he remembered and completely transformed. There was a maturity to her now, a groundedness that came from weathering storms alone. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The suite was massive, a living area, dining area, and he could see doorways leading to bedrooms beyond. Toys were scattered across the floor. The 3 little girls were sitting at a low table, coloring in books. They looked up when he entered. 6 eyes, his eyes, studying him with innocent curiosity. "Girls," Jasmine said gently, "this is Mr. Kim. Can you say hello?" "Hello, Mr. Kim." They chorused in unison, their Korean accented with American inflections. "Hello," he managed, his voice catching. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. They weren't just similar. They were identical triplets. Same face, same hair texture, a beautiful mix of their parents' features. Same everything except for the different color headband they wore to tell them apart. "This is Arya," Jasmine said, pointing to the girl in the pink headband. "Maya in blue and Zara in yellow. They're 4.5. 4.5. He did the mental math quickly. She would have been about 3 months pregnant when he left Los Angeles. Had she known? Had she suspected? "Why don't you girls go play in your room for a bit while I talk to Mr. Kim?" Jasmine suggested. "Is he our appa?" The one called Maya asked again, direct as a laser. Jasmine's expression softened. "That's what we're going to talk about, baby. Go on now." The girls gathered their coloring books and headed to one of the bedrooms, casting curious glances back at him as they went. Once the door closed, the silence in the suite became oppressive. "Sit," Jasmine said, gesturing to the couch. She took a chair across from him, maintaining distance. "I suppose you have questions." "Did you know?" The words burst from him. "When I left, did you know you were pregnant?" "I suspected," she admitted. "I'd miss a period, but I wasn't sure yet. I took a test 3 days after you left." 3 tests, actually. They were all positive. "Why didn't you tell me?" He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "Jasmine, I would have—" "Would have what?" she interrupted, her voice sharp. "Come back? Married me? We both know that wasn't going to happen. Your father needed you. Your family had plans for you. And I wasn't part of those plans. I had a right to know." "Yes," she agreed simply. "You did. and I wrestled with that every single day of my pregnancy. But I also knew that if I told you, one of three things would happen. Either you'd feel obligated to stay and end up resenting me and the babies, or you'd send money and try to set me up as your mistress, which I'd already said I wouldn't be, or you'd offer to take the babies and raise them in Korea without me. His silence confirmed her accuracy. I chose none of the above, she continued. I chose to raise my daughters myself, on my own terms. My mother helped. My brother helped. I finished law school, took one semester off of delivery and recovery, then went back. I passed the bar. I got a job at a good firm specializing in international corporate law. I built a life for us. In Los Angeles, for the first 3 years. Then I got an offer from a firm here in Seoul. Better position, better pay, and I wanted the girls to know their Korean heritage. So we moved here 6 months ago. 6 months? He stood abruptly, pacing. You've been in Seoul for 6 months, and you're just now telling me? I've been watching you, she said calmly. Learning about your life, your wife, your business operations. Making sure you were the kind of man I wanted in my daughters' lives. And he turned to face her. What did you decide? That the decision isn't mine alone. She met his gaze steadily. The girls have been asking about their father more and more. They see other kids with dads at school at the park. They want to know why they don't have one. I've told them their father lives far away. But now that we're in Seoul, that excuse doesn't work anymore. What do you want from me, Jasmine? She stood as well, crossing her arms. I want you to decide if you want to be their father. Not just financially. I don't need your money. I mean, actually be present in their lives. Read them bedtime stories. Teach them to ride bikes. Show up at school performances. Be their appa, not just name on some documents. You know it's not that simple. My position, my family. I know it's complicated, she cut him off. But those complications are yours to manage, not mine. I'm not asking you to leave your wife or abandon your responsibilities. I'm just asking if you want to know your daughters. Because if you don't, if this is going to be a source of shame or scandal that you'll hide and resent, then we can go back to the way things were. I'll tell the girls their father couldn't be part of their lives, and we'll move on. The bedroom door opened and Arya, or was it Zara, peeked out. Mommy, Maya needs to go to the bathroom. I'll be right there, sweetie. Jasmine's voice transformed, becoming warm and gentle. She looked back at Tae-Jean. I'm not trying to ruin your life. I just want what's best for my daughters. Think about it. Take your time. But understand that whatever you decide will be fine. We've been fine without you so far. She walked toward the bedroom, then paused. We're here for another week. After that, I need an answer. The girls deserve to know one way or another. Tae-Jean left the hotel in a daze, his mind spinning with impossibilities. Part 5, The Family Council. The Kim family compound had stood for 3 generations, a sprawling estate in Gangnam that housed not just immediate family, but also the inner circle of the organization. The main house, where Tae-Jean's father lived, was a traditional hanok that had been expanded and modernized over the years. It was there that Tae-Jean found himself 2 days after meeting Jasmine, summoned by his father for what was politely termed a family discussion. He entered the main hall to find not just his father, but his uncle De-young, his cousin Jae-sung, who handled the organization's financial operations, and his father-in-law, Park Hyun-woo. Min Se-yo's father sat with his arms crossed, his expression thunderous. Sit, his father commanded. Kim Il-sung was 72 years old, but still carried himself like a warlord. Gray-haired and stern, he built the Kim family's operations from street-level protection rackets into a diversified empire that touched construction, entertainment, real estate, and legitimate businesses that laundered money from less legal endeavors. He'd survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 government crackdowns, and countless rival families trying to take his territory. Tae-Jean sat, his spine straight, his face carefully neutral. I received an interesting phone call this morning, his father said, his voice deceptively calm. From Lee Sang-chul. Lee ran one of the rival organizations, a constant thorn in the Kim family's side. Tae-Jean's stomach sank. He told me that my son had been seen entering the Shilla Hotel alone, visiting a foreign woman's suite. a woman with 3 mixed-race children. Il-sung's eyes were like chips of ice. He suggested that this could be quite scandalous if the right people learned about it. He wondered if perhaps we might want to discuss territorial adjustments to ensure such information remain private. He's trying to blackmail us, Tae-jin said flatly. He doesn't need to, Park Hyun-woo interjected, his voice hard. My daughter came to me in tears, telling me that her husband has children with another woman. Children he knew nothing about, apparently. Do you understand what this does to our family's reputation? To our alliance? The children were conceived before Tae-jin and Min Seo were married, Uncle Deung pointed out pragmatically. That's not infidelity. It's still bastard children, Hyun-woo snapped. 3 of them. And worse, they're not even Korean. What happens when this gets out? How does that reflect on the Park family? What happens when this gets out? Tae-jin said, his voice cutting to the argument, is that I acknowledge my daughters, provide for them, and anyone who has a problem with it can deal with me directly. The room fell silent. His father's eyebrows rose. Your daughters? Yes. Tae-jin met his father's gaze steadily. Their names are Arya, Maya, and Zara. They're 4.5 years old. They're smart, beautiful, and they have Kim blood in their veins. That makes them family. This is ridiculous. Hyun-woo blustered. You can't seriously be considering. What would you have me do? Tae-jin turned to his father-in-law. Pretend they don't exist? They're children. My children. Would you have me abandon them to protect my image? You have a wife. Hyun-woo shot back. A wife who deserves better than this humiliation. You're right, Tae-jin acknowledged. Min Seo deserves better than the hand she was dealt. But she didn't marry me for love, and I didn't marry her for love. We both knew what this was. A strategic alliance between families. She's been a good wife, and I've been a respectful husband. But that doesn't change the fact that I have daughters who need their father. The mother, his father said, speaking for the first time in several minutes. Tell me about her. Tae-jin took a breath. Her name is Jasmine Williams. I met her at UCLA when I was doing my graduate studies. She's an attorney now, specializing in international corporate law. She moved to Seoul 6 months ago for work. She's raising the girls alone. She doesn't want my money. She makes her own. She just wants to know if I want to be part of my daughter's lives. Smart woman. Uncle Deung murmured. Not asking for money is clever. Makes it harder to dismiss her as a gold digger. She's not a gold digger, Tae-jin said sharply. She's brilliant and capable, and she's raising 3 children who will likely grow up to be just as brilliant and capable. His father studied him for a long moment. You loved her? Yes. Do you still? Tae-jin hesitated, then answered honestly. I don't know, but I want to know my daughters. That's not negotiable. Everything is negotiable, Hyun-woo said coldly. What about my daughter? What about her feelings? Min Seo deserves to know the truth, Tae-jin agreed. And she deserves the choice of whether she wants to remain married to me under these circumstances. If she wants a divorce, I won't contest it. A divorce? Hyun-woo stood abruptly. You think you can just dissolve an alliance between our families because some American woman showed up with children? Sit down, Il-sung commanded, his voice like steel. Hyun-woo sat, though his face remained flushed with anger. Il-sung turned his attention back to Tae-jin. I'm disappointed that you weren't more careful in your youth, but what's done is done. The question now is how we handle the situation with minimal damage to our interests. Father, I'm not finished. Il-sung held up a hand. You say these girls have Kim blood. If that's true, then they're family. Family means responsibility, but it also means protection. If we acknowledge them, we must protect them from our enemies. Do you understand what that means? Tae-jin did. It meant that Arya, Maya, and Zara would become targets, leverage to be used against the family. It meant they would need security, protection, a carefully managed public image. I understand, he said. I'll do whatever is necessary to keep them safe. Then we'll arrange a paternity test, his father decided. Discreetly, through our own medical people. Once we confirm they're yours, we'll determine how to handle the public relations aspect. As for your marriage, He looked at Hyunwoo. That's between Tae-jin and your daughter. The alliance between our families will stand regardless. We have too many mutual interests to let this destroy everything we built. Hyunwoo didn't look happy, but he nodded grudgingly. Go talk to your wife, Il-sung told Tae-jin. She deserves to hear your decision from you. And then bring this Jasmine Williams to meet me. If she's going to be the mother of Kim family children, I want to see what kind of woman she is. Part 6. Conversations. Min Seo was in her garden when Tae-jin returned home, sitting on a stone bench among her carefully tended roses. She'd always loved gardening, one of the few genuine passions she revealed in their 3 years of marriage. She looked up when he approached, but didn't rise. Your father called me, she said quietly. He told me there will be a family meeting after the paternity test is complete. Tae-jin sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. I'm sorry, Min Seo, for all of this. Are you sorry it happened or sorry I found out? Her voice was sharper than usual. Sorry that you're hurt. That's the last thing I wanted. But not sorry about the girls themselves. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. You won't be their father. Yes, he admitted. I do. Did you love her? It was the second time she'd asked, but this time her voice was different, not accusatory, but genuinely curious. When you were with her in America, did you love her? Yes. More than you love me? He could have lied, could have said something diplomatic. But Min Seo deserved honesty. I don't love you the same way I loved her. Our marriage was different from the beginning. We both knew that. Respect and duty instead of passion, she said, repeating what they'd agreed to on their wedding night. That they would build a partnership based on mutual respect and family obligation rather than romantic love. It had seemed sensible at the time, even mature. Now it felt hollow. Yes. Min Seo was quiet for a long moment, her fingers plucking at a rose petal. I was pregnant once, she said softly. Last year. I didn't tell you because I miscarried at 8 weeks. Tae-jin felt as if he'd been struck. Min Seo, I was going to tell you that weekend we went to Jeju Island. I had it all planned out. But the morning we were supposed to leave, I started bleeding. She smiled sadly. I told you I had food poisoning and couldn't travel. You were very kind about it. Didn't complain at all. And I flushed our baby away and never told you existed. Why? His voice was hoarse. Why didn't you tell me? Because I realized I didn't know if you'd be happy or sad. Because I couldn't tell if you even wanted children with me or if you were just doing your duty. Because our whole marriage is built on politeness and careful distance, and I didn't know if there was room in it for something as messy as grief. Min Seo, he reached for her hand, and she let him take it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Me too. She looked at their clasped hands. I've been a good wife to you, Tae-jin. I've managed your household, attended every boring function, smiled at all the right people, and never asked you for more than you were willing to give. I've been content with respect and companionship. But seeing you look at that woman yesterday, seeing your face when you saw those little girls, I realize I've never inspired that kind of feeling in you. And I never will. That doesn't mean... Let me finish, she said gently. I'm not saying this to hurt you or to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it because I need you to understand something. I don't want to be the bitter wife who resents her husband's children. I don't want to spend the rest of my life competing with a memory and 3 little girls who never asked to be born into this complicated situation. What are you saying? She turned to face him fully. I'm saying I want a divorce. The words hung between them, both expected and shocking. But not for the reasons you think, she continued. Not because I hate you or because I'm humiliated, but because I realized something when I saw your face yesterday. Life is too short to spend it in a marriage where both people are just going through the motions. You have a chance to build something real with your daughters, maybe even with their mother, and I have a chance to find someone who might actually love me, not just respect me. The alliance between our families will survive, she finished. Your father already spoke to mine. They're more concerned with territory and profit than with our personal lives. The alliance can continue even if our marriage doesn't. Are you sure? Tae-jin asked. Minesio, if you want to try to make this work. Do you? She challenged. Do you really want to try? Or would you just be doing your duty again? He couldn't answer, and his silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. I'll move back to my parents' house next week. We can tell everyone we decided apart amicably. There will be gossip, but there's always gossip. We'll survive it. You're a good person, Minesio, Tae-Jean said quietly. Better than I deserve. Yes, I am, she agreed with a small smile. And somewhere out there is a man who will appreciate that. Just like somewhere out there is a woman who already loves you, even if she won't admit it yet. And 3 little girls who need their father. She stood, brushing off her dress. Go to them, Tae-Jean. Build the life you should have had 5 years ago. And let me build mine. She walked back to the house, leaving Tae-Jean alone in the garden with his roses and his regrets. Part 7. The Test and the Truth. The paternity test was conducted 3 days later at a private medical facility owned by the Kim family. Jasmine brought all 3 girls, dressed identically in yellow sundresses with their hair styled in matching puffs. They were nervous but brave, holding their mother's hands as the doctor drew small amounts of blood from each of them. It's okay, babies, Jasmine murmured. Just a quick pinch, and then we'll go get ice cream. 3 scoops? Czar negotiated. 2 scoops, Jasmine countered. And don't tell Grandma. Tae-Jean watched from the corner of the room, marveling at how easily she managed them. They trusted her completely, responded to her gentle authority, and even in their nervousness, they smiled at her reassurances. When it was his turn to give blood, Maya watched with solemn eyes. Does it hurt? She asked. A little, he admitted. But I'm tough. Our mommy says being tough means you can feel scared but do anyway. Arya offered helpfully. Your mommy is very smart, Tae-Jean said. We know. All 3 girls chorused, and Jasmine laughed. The results would take 3 days. Tae-Jean offered to wait with Jasmine, but she shook her head. We have plans. The girls want to visit Gyeongbokgung Palace and see the changing of the guards. I could come with you, he offered, surprising himself. Jasmine studied him for a moment, then looked at the girls. Would you like Mr. Kim to come with us to the palace? Yes, they cheered unanimously. And so Tae-Jean found himself spending the afternoon at one of Seoul's most famous tourist sites, surrounded by school groups and foreign visitors, holding Maya's hand while she chattered about the Korean folk tales her mother had read to her. Arya kept stopping to take pictures with a small child's camera, determined to capture every detail. Czar stayed close to Jasmine, but kept glancing back at him, as if confirming he was still there. They're beautiful, Tae-Jean said during a quiet moment when the girls were distracted by a historical reenactment. They are, Jasmine agreed. They're also stubborn, too smart for their own good, and they never stop asking questions. They get that from you. She laughed. The stubbornness or the questions? Both. They watched the girls together, and for the first time in 5 years, Tae-Jean let himself imagine what his life could have been. Coming home to this every day. Bedtime stories and scraped knees. School performances and homework struggles. A real family, not just a strategic alliance. Jasmine, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. Minesio and I are getting divorced. She turned to look at him sharply. Because of this? Because of us. Because she deserves better than a husband who's just going through the motions. Because we both deserve a chance at something real. He met her eyes. I'm not saying this to pressure you or to suggest that we should get back together. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry, she said softly. I never wanted to break up your marriage. You didn't. It was already broken. We just never admitted it. The girls came running back, breathless with excitement about the soldiers' uniforms and the drums. And could they please learn traditional Korean dance? We'll see, Jasmine said, which both adults knew meant probably yes. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, and when the sun began to set, they shared dinner at a child-friendly restaurant. The girls were exhausted and happy, falling asleep one by one in the car on the way back to the hotel. Thank you for today, Jasmine said as they carried the sleeping children upstairs. They needed this.